Entering the game of SnowRunner as a mid-season vehicle DLC, the Dragon Wagons dual pack came as a surprise due to what trucks the community expected when the title of the DLC was revealed. As one of the strongest DLCs to date, the Avenhorn A15 and the Padera STD-4 join the long list of interesting trucks added to the game within the last few years. In this review, we'll see just how strong they actually are. First, we'll start with the Avenhorn, and then we'll move on to the Padera, starting out per usual, downsides first. Upon inspection in the garage, one thing that everyone notices about the Avenhorn is it has a massive nose, and its front overhang is pretty large as well, and I'm pretty sure you know where I'm going with this. It's going to take some damage to its engine, but there are some bumpers that have damage dampening properties, so just attach one with fuel and add some protection because this next one might open your eyes. Downside number 2 is actually pretty shocking, with the worst critical damage threshold percentages in the game currently. With a 380 damage tolerance engine, it takes just 76 points to become damaged, which will cause you to start seeing performance decreases the more the damage you take over time as well. This could be the case where the universal compartment add-on is a must to keep this truck out of the red. I'm not quite sure what Saber was intending, but its fuel consumption can be rather amazing for a truck with its size, or rather thirsty. With an inefficient large engine, it's tamed by all of its gearboxes with a 0% all-wheel drive penalty, somewhat. Yet it can creep up into those higher values, which can be concerning, but there are a few instances where it just becomes freakish. I don't want to reveal too much here because one of the better upsides is concerning gearboxes. I did, however, think this was very odd that some gears are very inefficient, and then other gears half or more its consumption, but just hold on to that thought. I'll elaborate a little bit later. After playing a little bit more with this truck and talking to some folks behind the scenes, I actually think the Avenhorn stability benefits more from its overall width from the whole vehicle itself than its center of gravities, and this is due to how crazy wide its custom tires are. Don't get me wrong here, the truck has been shown to be very stable, but there is a significant amount of weight in its cab. It is very much so evident from the cab sway when turning. However, the truck is still stable, but on extreme test when adding the crane, and the universal add-on has pushed it to give in to roll. Overall though, it's not a red flag. As I said, I think it's a pretty safe bet. Just some things and some information to consider. So as you see, there's not many red flags, and some that are noted here can be overlooked or just mitigated by points made, better play, and knowledge of some things that we will talk about right now as we break into the upsides list. At a very odd number of 270,200 torque, the Avenhorn is sitting at a higher spot among the 100 plus trucks in the game, but it's not the highest. With always-on all-wheel drive and diff lock, with some help from some other components that we will learn about soon, the A15 will make a strong case for being a top contender. A first of its kind concerning tire weights, with its front tires clocking in at 400 kilograms, but its rear tires at 800 kilograms. I must also mention its custom tires are about as wide as both the Futon tractor and the K7M tractor's double tires, with pretty nice tire coatings as well. Concerning ground clearance though, no, it does not have a raised suspension, nor does it have 60 plus inch tires, but its hitbox is quite relaxed, keeping it out of the mud. On upside number 3 here, I'm going to be very brief because I covered a lot of this on my first impression stream, but essentially the truck that held the top spot as the best puller for a super heavy was beaten, and that was the 605R per the test map. I've been kind of keeping track of what truck has been really great at pulling a certain amount of weight, and the 605R used to be the top spot of the pulling test. The reasoning that the Avenhorn basically has higher pulling potential is the reasoning boils down to higher torque, less overall vehicle weight, resulting in a higher power to weight, and tire codes and tire weights aiding in pulling potential, unlike the revered Dairy Special. Essentially what the Dairy Special should have been, the Avenhorn has now taken that title. Concerning stability and weight, in truth, its center of gravities are still rather good, except the cab weight there, but also I have seen a lot worse, so it's really not that much of a big deal for players. But its lower CGs you are seeing on screen, the wide tires, and also decent suspension travel make this one a very stable platform for players to enjoy. Concerning its actual weight of the vehicle, while it's not the heaviest in its class, it still is pretty heavy, and it also helps get it some grip in the elements. The A15 has some of the most unique gearboxes, so let's break down some of the interesting parts of these gearboxes. First, the special gearbox has no high gear, but has the lowest base consumption value on the gearbox than any vehicle in the game, and it has 6 gears. Second, the highway gearbox has 8 gears and has a really efficient high gear. 3, the advanced special gearbox, like the highway, both have a better base consumption than the normal advanced special gearboxes. But this one gets 7 gears, and also its high gear along with the highway gearbox have the most efficient consumption modifier for all high gears in the game. Pretty crazy. Essentially what I'm saying is high gear is the gear you want to be prioritizing to be in the majority of the time, more than you have before. If you want insane efficiency and want more range with a bonus of 25% torque as well, you want to be in high range. If you switch to low plus, or auto, or any of the auto gears, you will have much higher consumption. So please, stick to H gear. Keeping this one short and sweet here, the combination of the universal compartment, small crane, and high saddle actually pushes the saddle farther aft on the vehicle's frame. If you remove the compartment, it actually moves it forward on the frame. A gimmick of a find, I know, but a saddle that is farther aft will cause less contact, which is always a good thing. Lastly, the King Kong crane is back, which can handle the heaviest loads for a small crane. And finally, at our final upside here, even though I believe it's best suited as a saddle vehicle due to the significant amount of weight in its cab helping to keep down its front wheels for steering purposes, it does have a good selection of add-ons that most Mastodon lovers will have an easy time switching over to suit their needs. Alright guys, anyways, let's move on to the Padera STD-4. At downside number 1, oddly enough, this truck joins the Avenhorn with a very fragile engine. But in this case, after 68 damage, it becomes damaged and starts having issues, and those issues get worse as you continue to take damage. If you have a roof rack and the custom 1-slot add-on, you should be okay with a mistake or two, but it's just something to note here because after you take damage and you continue to take damage, your consumption and also your power drops significantly. Before moving on, I have to mention, it doesn't have a large fuel tank. It's rather small, but later on, I'll show you why that really doesn't matter. This downside is going to sound rather odd because even as I present this, I'm still torn in 2 directions. One is the belief that it's decently stable with some cab flex that could proc a driver response at times. The other is noticing that it has significant weight in its cab that doesn't necessarily help its cause, making it unstable on some conditions. That cab weight makes it slightly front heavy, but it's worse with a crane behind the cab. Furthermore, with cargo and add-ons, I'm not completely sold on it being very stable. I would say it's about average, which is actually better than a lot of options, so just be mindful of your balance. As much as I want this to be a low saddle truck, especially with what it has to offer, I can't deny that there isn't much space between the frame and the trailer when connected in a low saddle configuration. This could be a case where the Season 15 high saddle trailers is or could be the fix to make a gap preventing those collision issues. Lastly, there is no option to attach a fuel or a water tank semi-trailer. Don't get me wrong here, the ramped add-on is a fascinating addition overall, but I would like the ramps to actually touch the ground and perhaps the ability to extend them that would shallow the pitch angle of the ramps when touching the ground. Next, I would love to be able to move the bed winch point around, just making it easier to move trucks around that just can't use their engine to manipulate the position in the bed. At number 5 here, not necessarily a downside to be concerned with, but I can't help but notice the single narrow options for tires don't exist. Don't get me wrong, I love the doubles on an 8x8, but from what we know about single narrow tires versus wide tires, the truck would benefit in some areas with those options, but also it could be a very bad thing if we consider downside number 2. Before moving on, it is odd that it's in the heavy duty class, making it the first 8x8 and also the first truck in its class to have a special gearbox. I most likely would have ranked this in the off-road class, but hey, it is what it is. Lastly here at downside number 6, closing out this list here, I wanted to briefly mention that the high range gearbox is only in name. What do I mean by this? Well, essentially, it doesn't, or it is not going to show you the speeds that you probably expect to see from something of an 8x8 with a high range gearbox. And I'm going to reference the Azov 5319. We all know that thing travels really fast with a high range gearbox. Not so much here with the Padera. This high-range gearbox is essentially specialized. It doesn't have a crazy fast high gear. It will travel exceptionally well on hardened surfaces in auto, and you will get a little bit better speeds that way. But off-road, it's not going to be that fast of a truck regardless of what gearbox you put in it. And for me personally, I think it's okay because I expected the truck to be rather slow in off-road conditions because it does have different gearboxes and mostly advanced special gearboxes. Alright, now let's move on to the good news for the Padera STD-4. The Padera comes in at an odd number at 202,220 torque, and it's complemented with a switchable all-wheel drive and switchable diff lock, allowing it to pull some pretty heavy loads around at slow paces, but a lot better than many vehicles currently. I think this is a tribute to its torque, okay-ish power to weight, but something else as well. That something else would be 50-inch tires that are also entirely new concerning weights, at 300 kilograms in the front and 450 in the rears, and this is even with its custom mud single tires, giving it even more wheel weights than other trucks around it in the off-road and heavy-duty classes respectively. I did mention it does get off-road doubles as well. It sure does, and they actually do rather good, but we all knew this was going to be the case. With a very relaxed front hitbox, it almost acts as a raised suspension, giving it minimal contact with driving surfaces until it touches the rear parts of the vehicles, which have a mapping that you would see something on a base game vehicle. So it's not really that bad per se, but the fronts are really good. In my trials, I really had no issue in the elements, and I feel that it performs pretty well. Weighing almost the same as the Mack Defense, the Padera is now the top spot in its class, beating the Pinnacle by quite a bit. If it were in the off-road truck class, it would be around the number 3 heaviest in class, right behind the Azov 64131 and the Mack Defense. There is technically no reason to downgrade engines with the Padera because its top engine is actually the most efficient engine of the set. It actually has a better base consumption than pretty much any vehicle that has equipped a special gearbox, allowing a 0% all-wheel drive consumption penalty. Testing this with a fine-tuned gearbox or a high-range box against the Pinnacle outfitted with a fuel miser engine and its own custom multi-purpose gearbox, they were almost identical when pulling up a hill max load. Instead of me explaining all 4 of these gearboxes, I'm going to highlight them and you'll have all the information you need on screen, and then you can also further look at the spreadsheets in your own leisure. But first off, it's one of the most efficient high gear settings, second to the Avenhorn in the whole game. Except for the special gearbox, there is no high gear for that one. All of its options have lower base consumption than any normal advanced special gearbox. Yes, even the fine-tuned gearbox, which is kind of crazy. Oddly enough, even the fine-tune has a 0% all-wheel drive penalty. Similar to the Avenhorn, you want to be in high gear even more than you would be normally. These gearboxes are specifically set up to have the most efficient high gears. It's almost like the Pinnacle is as well, which gives you incredible uptime regardless of your tank size, because as noted in the downsides list, the Padera's fuel tank is not really that big. If you don't believe me on this whole concept, just please try it for yourself. Even under adverse conditions, its fuel burn is almost scout level. Oh, and if you have a roof rack and other special add-ons to call upon, your range is going to be quite good. Lastly, we come to the crane that just keeps appearing. From what I gathered, I believe the Padera can do well as a high saddle 6-slot hauler. Why? Its small crane can boom beyond the service box. The high saddle 6-slot trailer doesn't strike the frame as easy as it does with a low saddle, and there is fuel and repair on that trailer just in case you damage that fragile engine. Other options are actually really great too. Even a rear crane with a hitch trailer is a good move for overstacking, manipulating cargo better with the LC 3.8 crane, and balancing a front heavy CG. And I can't really believe I'm saying this, but I actually think the rear crane and hitch trailer is a better move in some instances if you're having trouble keeping this truck on its wheels. The truck itself can be set up for both saddle and hitch trailer enjoyers. So in conclusion, I don't want to use this time to rant about what I feel is balanced in the game of SnowRunner, but it's a subject that I'm pretty passionate about, opinionated, and also a little too outspoken on at times, and it's most likely not going to change what is to come in the future, nor has it in the past. Plainly speaking here about the Dragon Wagons DLC, it's most likely the strongest I've seen in the past 5 years. I believe even if it was just the Avenhorn alone, I would still stand by that statement. The Avenhorn, as you've seen here, or if you've even played with it, you notice that it is on a different level than most trucks in the game right now. From outpulling its competitors in its class to walking through harsh terrain while having the most broken gear be its most efficient gear is just a wild thing to digest. It has so many, for lack of better words, gimmicks at play, with special tires and weights, special gearboxes, higher power to weight than its competitors, and also a favorable collision mesh. Not many trucks have all those things going for it, so it's naturally going to be a competitor or a contender for the title. It's essentially a Frankenstein truck. The Padera, on the other hand, has similarities in a sense, but not as stable, being that it's more narrow and not nearly having as wide of tires as the Avenhorn's crazy wide tires that it has on its customs to make up for its CGs. I've witnessed this truck also pull pretty crazy weights, but also I believe the main thing going for the Padera is it's probably a contender for the most efficient hauling class vehicle in the game if we're looking at the fuel burn gauge. But overall, I would still prefer a good many vehicles over this after this review. In closing, the Dragon Wagons DLC dual pack has insane amounts of value for those wanting a truly strong option that you might not have seen before. With that being said, try this one out and let me know what you think. I hope y'all have really enjoyed the video and potentially learned a few things along the way as well. So until next time, y'all, God bless and stay upright.